The ice world did not hate her. It simply did not care. Its wind howled low and endless across the white plains, carving grief into stone and silence into bone. And the alien girl knelt in the snow with her arms wrapped tightly around the small, trembling creature pressed to her chest. Its fur crusted with frost, its breathing shallow and uneven. She pressed her forehead against its warm spot beneath the ear and whispered sounds meant only for comfort. Sounds from a home that now felt like a dream slipping away. She had been taught that the cold was honest, that it killed without anger and spared without mercy. And now as her limbs burned and then slowly went numb, she understood why her people feared exile more than death. Because exile meant being forgotten by law, erased by decree, sentenced not by blade but by distance. Once she had been called princess, not loudly, not in public, but in quiet rooms behind living crystal walls. A title wrapped in secrecy and expectation. A future shaped by duty and balance. Now the word meant nothing here, stripped away by galactic law that declared her bloodline void, her existence inconvenient, her survival unnecessary. The pet stirred weakly and she tightened her hold, sharing what little warmth remained, choosing to freeze together rather than leave it alone. The thought of standing and walking away felt worse than the cold clawing into her chest. She closed her eyes and pictured stars, long corridors of light, the hum of ships passing beyond view, none of them stopping, none of them allowed to stop. The law was clear, no rescue permitted, no interference, no witnesses required. The ice would do its work quietly. That was when the sound reached her ears, not the wind, not the cracking ice, but something deeper, heavier, rhythmic, a vibration that traveled through the ground and into her bones. Her eyes snapped open, heart stuttering between hope and fear, because hope hurt more than cold when it failed. A shadow moved against the white horizon, wrong in shape, too angular, too deliberate, growing larger through the storm, and then she saw him, a human wrapped in layered armor dulled by frost and travel. His visor half iced over. His steps slow but unyielding as if the planet itself had challenged him and lost. Humans were not supposed to be here, humans were bound by the same law. Humans were known for obeying rules when consequences were written in blood and fire. Every lesson she had learned told her this was impossible, and yet he walked toward her anyway. He saw them, really saw them, not as a problem or a violation but as two living beings fading too fast, and something tightened in his chest behind the armor. Something older than rank and older than fear. Memories flickered through him of snow back home, of a stray animal he had once saved as a child, of orders he had followed and orders he had regretted. He knelt without hesitation, the cold biting through his gloves as he reached out, pausing only for a breath as her eyes met his, wide and luminous even in despair, alien yet unmistakably alive. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, offering warmth before rescue, respect before command. "You're freezing," he said softly, his voice roughened by the storm, but steady. So steady it broke something inside her. She tried to speak, tried to warn him, but her jaw trembled too hard. The pet let out a faint sound and the human's resolve hardened instantly. He activated a thermal shield, wrapping it around them both, heat blooming like a miracle. Her breath hitched painfully as sensation flooded back, tears freezing along her lashes as she clutched the creature tighter. "You shouldn't," she finally whispered, the words scraping out of her throat. "The law." "I know," he answered, already lifting the pet gently, already adjusting his stance to shield her from the wind. "And I don't care." Above them, unseen through the storm, long-range sensors awakened, a human warship drifting at the edge of detection. Its crew tense as warning signals flared to life. One soldier had gone dark on an unauthorized trajectory. One act of defiance lighting up the cold void. Down on the ice, the human stood, carrying both lives against his chest. Each step an act of rebellion. Each breath a promise. Fate had shifted quietly. Destiny had leaned closer, and somewhere beyond the storm, the universe had begun to pay attention. The warmth felt unreal at first, like a memory pretending to be heat. Her nerves screamed as feeling returned, pain blooming sharp and bright before settling into a trembling ache. She gasped in, clutched the small creature as if the warmth itself might vanish if she loosened her grip. The human adjusted the thermal field with practiced movements. his hands steady even as the storm pressed harder against his armor. "Easy," he murmured, not to command but to reassure. His voice carrying something she had not heard in a long time, certainty without cruelty. She nodded weakly, trusting him without understanding why. Perhaps because trust was all she had left. The pet stirred, eyes fluttering open, letting out a faint churring sound that made her chest tighten with relief. She pressed her cheek against its head and laughed softly, the sound breaking into a sob halfway through. The human watched the moment silently, something heavy settling behind his ribs. This was not a mission briefing, not a tactical problem. This was life clawing its way back from the edge. He began moving, each step deliberate, conserving energy, shielding them from the wind with his body. The ice beneath his boots cracked and groaned as if warning him to turn back. But he did not slow. His HUD pulsed red warnings about exposure limits and unauthorized action. He dismissed them with a flick of his gaze. "You're human," she said suddenly, the words carrying disbelief more than observation. "Last I checked," he replied, a faint smile tugging at his mouth despite the situation. "Name's Aaron." She hesitated, then spoke softly. "I am Lyra." She did not add the title that once followed her name. She did not know if it still belonged to her. Aaron nodded as if her name alone was enough, as if he did not need more to justify what he was doing. The simplicity of that nearly undid her. A sharp tone crackled in his earpiece, distorted by interference, then cleared just enough for a voice to cut through. Tense and urgent. "Aaron, report immediately. You are violating direct orders." He did not answer right away. His eyes scanned the horizon, calculating distance to the extraction point, calculating how much time they had before the storm worsened, before consequences arrived. "Command," he finally said, calm and firm. "I have 2 civilians in critical condition, requesting emergency extraction." Silence followed, thick and dangerous. Then another voice replaced the first, colder. "Official. Negative, soldier. You are instructed to disengage. The planet is under non-interference mandate by galactic law." Lyra felt the words like a blade. Even now the law reached for her throat. She looked at Aaron, expecting hesitation, fear, something, but his jaw only tightened. "With respect," he said quietly. "I'm not leaving them, Aaron." The voice warned, "This will escalate." "Then let it," he replied, cutting the channel, the finality of it echoing louder than the storm. Far above the ice, the human warship adjusted its orbit, internal alarms lighting corridors in red. Officers exchanged sharp looks. A single unauthorized rescue could ignite a diplomatic crisis, or worse, a military one. But none of them could ignore the feed now streaming in. A lone soldier carrying an alien girl and her pet through a frozen wasteland, refusing to let go. On the surface, the wind screamed louder. The thermal field flickered under strain. Aaron shifted the weight, pulling Lyra closer, sharing his own body heat without thinking. She felt the strength in him, not the kind forged by weapons, but by resolve, by a line he would not cross backward. "You will die for this?" she whispered, not as a threat, but as a truth she had been raised to understand. He glanced down at her, snow clinging to his visor, eyes fierce and gentle all at once. "Maybe," he said, "but you won't." Something in her broke open then, a dam of restraint shaped by years of protocol and expectation. Tears streamed freely, freezing against her skin. She buried her face against his chest armor, listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat through the plating. It sounded like home. Ahead, through the storm, a dark shape began to rise from the ice. An old research outpost abandoned decades ago. Its beacon long dead, but its walls still standing, shelter, temporary but enough. Aaron adjusted course, hope threading cautiously into his steps. Behind them, unseen but inevitable, engines ignited in distant orbit, alien warships shifting position as automated systems flagged a breach of law, vectors plotted, responses prepared. On the frozen plain, one human soldier walked forward anyway, carrying fate in his arms, unaware that with every step, the quiet rescue was becoming something far larger, something that would soon demand a battle. The outpost loomed closer through the storm, its dark frame cutting against the white like a scar that refused to fade, ancient alloy walls half buried in ice, antennas bent and frozen in positions of long-forgotten purpose. Aaron pushed forward with the last of his strength, lungs burning, legs screaming beneath the armor, but he did not slow, not when. The shelter was this close, not when Lyra's breathing had grown steadier against his chest. Inside her, warmth was returning in layers, first pain, then sensation, then something deeper that felt like awakening. She could feel his heartbeat clearly now, strong and relentless, a rhythm that spoke of survival against impossible odds. Humans were fragile compared to many species. She had been taught that. Yet this one felt unbreakable in ways that mattered. As they crossed the threshold, the wind cut away abruptly, silence crashing down around them so suddenly it made her ears ring. Aaron sealed the hatch behind them, frost crackling as the mechanism locked. The interior lights flickered weakly, then stabilized into a dim amber glow. Dust and ice crystals drifted through the air like ghosts stirred from sleep. He lowered her gently onto a bench bolted into the wall, easing the pet from her arms and setting it within the thermal field. She protested weakly until she saw the care in his movements, the way his hands trembled now that they were no longer fighting the storm, exhaustion finally demanding its due. "Stay with me," he said, crouching in front of her, removing his helmet. Cold air rushed in around his face, revealing skin reddened by frost, eyes sharp with concern. "I am," she whispered, surprised to find it was true. The outpost hummed faintly as its systems struggled to wake after decades of neglect. Old power conduits groaned, lights brightened a fraction. Somewhere deep within the structure, a generator coughed and began to turn. The sound felt like a heartbeat of its own, slow and uncertain. Lyra looked around, memories stirring unbidden. She had seen places like this before in archived recordings, listening posts from the early expansion era, built before the galaxy learned to fear itself, before law hardened into something absolute. This place predated the mandate that had condemned her. "You know what they will do," she said quietly, her voice steadier now, more dangerous for it. "They will not forgive this." Aaron leaned back against the wall, sliding down until he sat on the cold floor, armor clanking softly. "They never forgive," he replied. "They just decide who's worth the trouble." She studied him, really studied him, the lines at the edges of his eyes, the scars visible along his jaw, marks of past battles he had survived and choices he had lived with. "Why us?" she asked. "Why break everything for strangers?" He hesitated, searching for words that did not feel small. "Because leaving you would have been easier," he finally said. "And I'm tired of easy." The honesty of it struck her harder than any speech could have. Among her people, sacrifice was ritualized, expected, wrapped in ceremony. But this was raw and unadorned. A choice made alone in the cold. The pet stirred again, stronger this time, lifting its head and letting out a low resonant sound that vibrated through the room. The lights flickered in response, then steadied at a brighter level. Lyra froze, recognition flashing across her features. "That is not fear," she said softly, awe threading through her voice. "It is calling." Aaron straightened, alert instantly. "Calling what?" "Something old," she answered, eyes distant now, pupils dilating as if reflecting unseen stars. "This species was bonded to my bloodline long before the Empire. They resonate with structures like this, ancient ones." As if in answer, a panel along the far wall slid open with a grinding sound, revealing symbols etched into the metal, glowing faintly with inner light. Symbols Lyra had not seen since childhood lessons she thought erased along with her title. Her breath caught, memories flooding back, whispered warnings, stories of hidden compacts and forgotten obligations. "This outpost?" she said, voice trembling. "It was built to watch over something, not a place, but a promise." "What kind of promise?" Aaron asked, though some instinct already told him he would not like the answer. "A contingency," she said, meeting his gaze, fear and wonder colliding in her eyes. "A safeguard in case the law failed the galaxy." The pet's call grew stronger, echoing through the structure, deeper systems responding now, lights igniting in sequence, energy readings spiking across Aaron's HUD as dormant arrays powered up, sending signals into the void. Far above the planet, Alien warships shifted abruptly as unknown transmissions burst from the ice world's surface. Signatures too old to classify yet too powerful to ignore. Command centers erupted into chaos as analysts scrambled, recognizing patterns they had been taught were myth. On the frozen world below, a human soldier and an exiled alien girl stood at the center of awakening history. The rescue no longer quiet, the mystery no longer buried, fate tightening its grip as the universe prepared to demand answers. The outpost shuddered as if something deep within it had drawn a long-forgotten breath. Panels along the walls slid aside with grinding reluctance. Light spilled from seams that had not opened in centuries, bathing the chamber in a soft, radiant glow that felt warmer than any heater, older than any machine. Aaron rose slowly, instinct screaming that this was the moment everything tipped from rescue into something far more dangerous. "What did we just wake up?" he asked, his voice low, careful not to disturb whatever had begun to stir. Lyra stood unsteadily, strength returning in waves now, her posture straightening as if memory itself were rebuilding her. She reached out and placed her palm against the glowing symbols, and the light responded instantly, brightening, shifting color, bending toward her touch like a living thing. "My people called it the Covenant Watch," she said, awe trembling through every word. "It was built by humans and aliens together before the current order, before the law became absolute." Aaron turned sharply. "Humans helped build this." "Yes," she replied, eyes shining. "But that history was erased, alliances rewritten, cooperation reframed as myth, because unity frightened those who wanted control." The pet let out a resonant call again, longer this time, and the floor beneath them vibrated. A central platform rising slowly from the ice-crusted ground, its surface etched with the same symbols now blazing brightly. Holographic projections burst into life above it, star maps unfolding in layers, showing ancient borders, forgotten fleets, and something else, something that made Aaron's breath catch. Human warships, not the modern kind, but massive ancient vessels, bristling with hybrid technology, designs he had only seen in forbidden archives. "This is impossible," he whispered. "It was meant to be," Lyra said softly, then turned to face him fully, her expression changing, the last traces of helplessness falling away, replaced by something heavy with truth. "Aaron, there is something you must know." Outside the outpost, the ice cracked violently as energy surged upward, a beacon punching through the storm and into space, its signal ancient and unmistakable. Every major power in the sector received it simultaneously. Alarms screamed, councils convened in panic, because the Covenant Watch was not supposed to exist anymore. Aaron met her gaze. "Say it." She inhaled slowly, the air shimmering around her as the light wrapped closer, responding to her presence alone. "I was not exiled for political inconvenience," she said. "I was condemned because I am the last living key." The words hit harder than any explosion. Aaron's mind raced, soldier instincts clashing with disbelief. "Key to what?" "To the Covenant," she answered, voice steady now, resolute. "To the command authority over the United Fleets, human and alien alike. A failsafe designed for the moment the law stopped protecting life and started deciding who deserved it." The holograms shifted again, focusing on a single protocol, activation conditions flashing across the display. Condition 1, a key abandoned by the law. Condition 2, a human protector acting in defiance of orders. Condition 3, a bonded sentinel species present, all conditions glowing active. Aaron stared at the screen, then back at her, a humorless laugh escaping him. "You're telling me the galaxy just handed you absolute power because I broke the rules?" "No," she said gently, stepping closer. "It handed us responsibility because you proved the rules could be broken for the right reason." The outpost trembled harder now, distant thunder echoing as the ancient systems completed their awakening. Beneath the ice, something massive shifted, docking bays unlocking, dormant fleets stirring after centuries of silence. In orbit, the first alien warship dropped from hyperspace aggressively, weapons charging, followed by another and another, forming a tightening noose around the planet. Their commanders faced an impossible choice: fire on a relic that could unite their enemies, or hesitate and lose control forever. Aaron's calm flared to life again, command voices overlapping in panic and fury, demanding status, issuing threats, promising court-martial and execution. He muted them without a word, his eyes never leaving Lyra's. "You could stop this," he said quietly. "Call it off, hide again." She shook her head, tears glistening but unfallen. "Too many have frozen quietly in places like this because the law said they should." The pet moved between them, pressing against both, its presence grounding, completing the circuit of something ancient and deliberate. Lyra reached out and took Aaron's hand, the light flaring brighter than ever at their contact. Systems across the outpost recognizing the union. Authorization granted not by species or rank, but by intent. Far above, ancient human warships tore free from the ice world's hidden vaults, rising into orbit like legends returning from the dead, their arrival sending shockwaves. Through every fleet watching, Aaron felt the weight of it then. Not fear, but purpose. The quiet rescue was over, the universe had drawn a line, and on one side stood law without mercy. On the other stood a human soldier who refused to walk away, an alien princess reborn as a key, and a destiny that would no longer stay buried. The sky above the ice world fractured into motion and fire. Ancient warships climbed from hidden vaults beneath the crust, their hulls shedding ice like breaking chains, engines igniting with a deep resonant thunder that rolled across the planet. The storm itself seemed to recoil, clouds torn apart by rising heat and light. In orbit, chaos spread faster than any transmission. Alien fleets broke formation as targeting systems failed to classify the newcomers. Signatures refused to match modern databases. Weapons hesitated in half-locked states, commanders shouting over one another as the impossible unfolded before them. "These are human designs," one voice shouted across a panicked council channel, "but modified beyond anything we know." Another answered with dread, "They are Covenant vessels." On the surface, the outpost shook violently as the last docking clamps disengaged, warning lights flashing across ancient panels. Lyra staggered and Aaron caught her without thinking, his grip firm, grounding them both as the structure groaned around them. "They will not allow this," Aaron said, eyes locked on the rising holographic battle map, new red vectors flooding the display as hostile fleets converged. "Every major power will see this as a threat." "They already do," Lyra replied, her voice calm in a way that frightened him more than panic would have. "The Covenant was designed to end cycles like this, and those who benefit from the cycle will fight it." The pet let out a low, steady resonance, the sound rippling through the chamber. The map shifted again, defensive perimeters forming automatically around the planet, ancient algorithms waking and adapting. A harsh transmission cut through the noise, an alien commander's face filling the display, eyes burning with fury. "Deactivate the Covenant watch immediately," the voice demanded. "By authority of galactic law, you are in violation and will be destroyed." Lyra stepped forward, shoulders squared, the light responding to her presence. "Galactic law abandoned me to freeze," she said evenly. "It forfeited its authority over my life." "Princess Lyra," the commander snarled, recognition dawning too late. "You were declared null. Then you should not fear my words," she replied. And the channel went silent as Covenant protocols overrode external command access. Above, the first shots were fired, a warning barrage streaking across space, modern plasma fire splashing harmlessly against Covenant shields that bent and absorbed energy like water over stone. The response came instantly, controlled and precise, ancient human cannons firing in measured bursts that disabled engines without shattering hulls. A message written in restraint rather than rage. Aaron watched the exchange with clenched fists. "They're holding back." "Yes," Lyra said, pain flickering across her face. "Because this is not about conquest, it is about correction." But restraint did not last. A rogue fleet broke formation, driven by fear and ambition, weapons charging beyond safe limits, targeting the ice world itself, targeting the outpost. "They're going to fire on the planet," Aaron said, shock hardening into anger. "Millions of years of treaties, and they still choose annihilation." Lyra closed her eyes, reaching deeper into the Covenant systems, her breath shaking as the weight pressed down on her. "Then they leave us no choice?" The ancient fleets responded as one, energy signatures spiking, new weapon arrays unfolding from beneath armored plates. Beams of condensed force lanced outward, striking the rogue fleet with overwhelming precision. Ships went dark mid-charge, drifting powerless. Their crews alive but defeated. The galaxy watched as a superpower fell silent in seconds. Across the stars, governments reeled. Emergency councils declared states of crisis. Ancient alliances cracked. Species long suppressed saw hope ignite for the first time in generations, while those who had enforced the law felt something unfamiliar tighten around their throats. Accountability. Inside the outpost, Aaron felt the consequences settle heavy in his chest. "This is bigger than saving you now," he said quietly. Lyra met his gaze, eyes wet but unyielding. It always was. A new transmission cut through, this one bearing human command codes. Encrypted, urgent, "Aaron, stand down." The voice pleaded, stripped of earlier authority. "You're about to start a war that will burn the galaxy." He swallowed, pain flickering across his face. "No," he answered softly. "I stopped one from freezing to death." The silence that followed carried more weight than any threat. Outside, fleets repositioned, borders redrawn in real time, warships from distant systems changing course, some to oppose, some to join, the galaxy tilting toward a conflict that would redefine power itself. On the frozen world below, a human soldier stood beside an alien princess reborn as a key. Knowing the rescue had ignited something unstoppable, danger closing in from every star. The fate of countless worlds now tied to a single choice made in the cold, and the universe prepared to decide whether compassion was worth the cost of war. The galaxy held its breath as fleets aligned across the dark, lines of light and intent stretching between stars. Every movement watched, every hesitation measured. The Covenant ships remained steady, ancient hulls glowing with restrained power, while modern armadas circled like predators unsure whether to strike or flee. Inside the outpost, the tremors eased into a low constant hum. The systems had stabilized, but the pressure had not. It pressed inward now, heavy and personal. Aaron stood near the main viewport, watching distant flashes bloom in orbit. Not battles yet, but warnings, promises. Lyra swayed and he was at her side instantly, catching her as her knees weakened. The light around her flickered, not failing but straining, as if the Covenant itself demanded more than any single being should give. "It's too much," he said, voice rough. "You're carrying all of this alone." "I was made for this," she replied, though the words shook. "From the moment I was born, they shaped me as a lock and never asked if I wished to be opened." The pet pressed close, its warmth steady, its resonance deepening. The sound now layered with harmonics that made the air vibrate. Aaron felt it in his chest, in his bones, like a second heartbeat aligning with his own. A new wave of transmissions flooded in, not threats this time, but pleas, neutral worlds calling for protection. Oppressed systems broadcasting proof of decades of silent extinction under the law. The Covenant arrays captured everything, projecting images into the chamber, frozen bodies on forgotten moons. Refugee convoys turned away. Children declared non-entities by decree. Lyra gasped, tears finally spilling free, each image cutting deeper than the last. "I didn't know," she whispered. "No one was supposed to," Aaron said, anger and sorrow twisting together. "That's how they kept it clean." The pet cried out sharply and the projections shifted, revealing something else. A final protocol buried beneath layers of failsafes, a resolution option. Energy readings spiked dangerously. Alarms sounded for the first time. Aaron's HUD lit up with crimson warnings. "Lyra," he said slowly, "tell me that's not what I think it is." She stared at the data, face draining of color. "It's the severance," she breathed. "A reset command. It can dismantle the current law framework entirely, dissolve the enforcement cores, free every system under it." "And the cost?" he asked, already knowing there would be one. Her voice broke. "The key." Silence fell thick and suffocating, the meaning settling between them. Ancient safeguards always demanded balance, always demanded sacrifice. The Covenant had not been built to rule forever. It had been built to end something, and endings required payment. Aaron stepped closer, taking her hands firmly, grounding her. "No," he said without hesitation. "We find another way." "There isn't one," she replied softly, tears streaming now. This was always the final measure, a life for a galaxy. Outside, a hostile coalition fleet surged forward at last. weapons charging across thousands of hulls. No more warnings, no more delay. The first volleys streaked toward the Covenant perimeter, space igniting in violent color. The ancient fleets responded, but this time with visible strain. Shields flared brighter, power routed from deeper reserves. Time was running out. Aaron pulled her into his arms, armor clanking as he held her tightly. "You mattered before this," he said fiercely. "You mattered in the snow. You mattered without any of it." She clutched him back, shaking. "And because you saved me then, I can save them now." The pet moved between them, its resonance peaking. A sudden surge of light engulfed the chamber, data streams rewriting themselves in real time. Aaron's HUD exploded with new symbols, human neural patterns matching Covenant authorization codes. "What's happening?" he shouted over the rising hum. Lyra stared in shock as the system recalculated. "It's adapting," she said, awe and terror colliding. "It's recognizing you." The projections shifted again, conditions updating, key compatibility expanded, human protector integrated, authority no longer singular. Aaron felt something burn through him, not pain, but connection. Memories not his own brushing against his thoughts. Ancient human engineers arguing with alien architects. Promises spoken over shared blood and hope. They never meant for one of us to die, he realized aloud. They meant for us to choose together. Lyra looked up at him, eyes wide, hope trembling back into existence. "Then stand with me." "I already am," he answered without doubt. In orbit, the battle intensified, Covenant shields faltering under combined fire, systems diverting power urgently. The severance timer began its countdown, not to destruction, but to decision. On the frozen world below, a human soldier and an alien princess stood united, not as weapon and key, but as partners, the galaxy watching as compassion and defiance converged into a single moment. The climax rushing closer, unstoppable, asking the universe one final question: whether it would be ruled by fear or rewritten by those willing to stand together and refuse to let anyone freeze alone. The countdown reached its final moments as space burned above the ice world, shields flaring like dying stars. Fleets locked in a standoff where hesitation and annihilation balanced on the same breath. Inside the outpost, the light intensified until shadows vanished entirely, leaving only truth, raw and undeniable. Aaron stood beside Lyra at the heart of the Covenant watch, their hands clasped, the resonance of the pet steady between them like a living bridge. The system no longer demanded sacrifice. It demanded intent, not what they were, but why they stood. Authority request. The Covenant intoned without voice, without judgment. Lyra lifted her chin. No longer the girl abandoned to freeze, no longer only a princess or a key, but a survivor who had been seen. "I claim responsibility," she said, her voice carrying across every channel. "Not to rule, not to punish, but to end a law that forgot mercy." Aaron stepped forward, his presence echoing through the ancient architecture, human neural patterns stabilizing the surge, grounding the power that once threatened to consume her. "And I stand as witness," he said, "that life matters before law." The pet cried out softly, a sound of completion, and the Covenant responded, not with violence, but with release. Energy cascaded outward in waves that did not destroy, but unraveled. Enforcement cores across the galaxy shut down simultaneously. Decrees dissolved, borders faded. The machinery of silent extinction powered off forever. In orbit, weapons went dark mid-fire. Targeting systems collapsed into inert silence. Commanders stared in disbelief as authority codes vanished from their consoles. Fleets drifted powerless, not defeated, but freed from orders that no longer existed. Across countless worlds, doors opened, exile markers blinked out. Children once deemed illegal took their first unafraid breaths. The galaxy exhaled as if waking from a long nightmare it had learned to accept as normal. Inside the outpost, the light softened, systems powering down gently. The Covenant fulfilled at last. Ancient warships in orbit shifted course, not to dominate, but to withdraw, their purpose complete, their vigil ended. One by one they slipped into hyperspace, legends returning to rest. Lyra sagged suddenly and Aaron caught her, holding her as the last of the energy faded. fear gripping him until she laughed weakly against his chest. Alive, unmistakably alive. "It's over," she whispered, disbelief and wonder entwined. He rested his forehead against hers, eyes burning. "You're safe." "So are they," she replied, tears slipping free at last. The pet climbed into their arms, warm and solid, proof that some bonds survived every law and every war. The outpost around them fell silent. No longer a weapon, no longer a watch, just a shelter that had done its duty. Hours later, dawn broke across the ice world, pale light spilling over endless white. Rescue ships descended carefully now. No mandates, no threats, only people arriving to help because help was needed. Aaron stood outside as medics moved around them, watching the sky clear, feeling the weight finally lift from his chest. Command would never be the same, the galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time that felt like hope rather than fear. Lyra joined him, wrapped in a thermal cloak, her eyes reflecting the rising sun. "They will call us many things," she said softly. "Let them," he answered. "We know what we did." She smiled then, small and real, the smile of someone choosing life not because it was allowed, but because it was right. She reached for his hand and he took it without hesitation. No titles between them, no orders, just two beings who had refused to walk away. Far above, stars shone quietly, indifferent as ever, but changed all the same, because somewhere among them, the story had spread, not of fleets or power, but of a human who stopped in the cold, an alien girl who chose compassion over despair, and a galaxy that learned too late but not too late enough, that destiny does not belong to law or fear. It belongs to those who stay, who hold on, and who refuse to let anyone freeze alone.